So here's Mark getting all set up to take his first swing to get analyzed. So let's see what the technology says.
All right, so here's what we get to look at. We have video. We can look at just purely 3D animation. The most important part that we're going to look at are these performance graphs.
Okay.
And then the TPI, the Titleist Performance Institute, has put together their own versions of how they package up the graphs, but we're going to look at them in a larger format. They just put it all on one screen so we can see everything at once.
Okay.
So first things first here, we can look at our video. We get a little graininess because Chaz is in the background capturing, but here's what we can do. So ideally we want to look at and see what's going on as far as your head position, and then the other big thing we can look at from this line is see if there's any sway or slide that the 3D with this generation of software is just not going to capture. But the video is really easy from a head-on position to look and see if you fall outside of those parameters. So what we'll do is we'll speed this up, and then we'll take a look frame by frame here. So as you come back, looking to see what's happening there. Right hip looks pretty good. We're staying right within our parameters. A little bit of a slide there, as you can see, coming through there.
Sliding outside the lines, you mean?
Yep, just a hair. But that then, you know, would force us to look at your screening stuff from the physical biomechanical screening and say, all right, is there an issue potentially with hip rotation? Is there an issue potentially with core stabilization or trunk mobility? So there could be several different physical causes for this, and that's where the training programs would come into this. So as you're coming down, and then we're leaning back and hanging back. So we'll see that, again, that could be something that may down the line lead to some lower back issues, something we want to address right away. Nice tall follow through. So again, if you want to watch that in real time here, let you watch one at full speed. And maybe a little loss of posture, not much though. But again, the big thing that this technology, that the 3D allows us to get, is not so much the video component, it's nice, but how efficient are you at moving your body compared to anybody under contract at this point with Titleist, Cobra, and FootJoy. So these guys compile all this data, and we can look here now at our graph, our swing summary. And what we want to look for is separation between the red line is your hips.
Okay.
The green line is going to be your upper body, your shoulders. The blue line is your hand or the club shaft. So we want to see that separation. It takes a little while there to see the red and the green separate. So those hips and shoulders are moving together. We do get the separation there. A little sloppy here at the acceleration as we transition down out of the top of your backswing there. And then here what we want to see is ideally a red peak, a green peak, and then a blue peak, with the blue peak really accelerating maximally at the impact line. To compare that, if you want to see an example graph of this, that's the ideal. You can see how we get red, green, blue. It's almost like this cracking the whip phenomenon where you effectively transfer power from your legs to your shoulders, to your hands, to the club. And we're a little late with the legs.
Right.
Shoulders are okay. And then the hand again, maybe a little deceleration into the ball. But you can see, so not quite the same there. We can break this down even further and look at what exactly is going on with your pelvis. So this green line here is going to be more of our pelvis bend forward and backwards.
Okay.
And as you go through the golf swing, it's almost going to look like a ski jump on an ideal graph, and we'll isolate that green one a little bit more in a second here. But you can see here it's pretty flat. There's not a whole lot happening there until the very end when things start to accelerate down as you're going through the ball. So that may be a reason why we see a sway, instead of actually getting a rotation or a pelvic bend, and why we see the hanging back also. because we're lacking some of that pelvic mobility. Again, if we want to break this down, pelvic bend, we want to see that really be a ski jump. There should be a little blip and then drop. We're going way the other way. So that's a sign that there may be something going on with the pelvis. Upper body stuff, ideally, the best way to think about this part of the graph, we can look a little more at these, but the most important one quickly to glean information from is this green one. This is our 0 line. Imagine that green line is like a hammock. You don't want your butt getting wet in the water there below that 0 line. That's a reverse spine angle or a reverse pivot. That's trouble for your back. So we're well above that. That's looking good.
Nice.
All right. So last thing we can look at here quickly with our graphs is X factor. Here, the K-Vest, they have their own technology and terms. They call it K-factor. But the idea is this is the amount of separation you get from your lower body and your upper body. And that's really where power in the golf swing comes from. All rotational sports. If you can separate the lower body being stable and then wind that upper body up to create potential energy, you get more kinetic energy coming down through the golf swing. Ideally, we want to see that right here in the middle between the top and the impact position. You're maxing out even before you get to the top there. So that says, again, maybe there's something going on either with some flexibility of the upper body or some strength in the lower body.
So you want to be more to the right?
You got it. You got it. Here's an example graph. Ideally,
Okay.
we want to see that peak in between these goalposts here of the top of the backswing and the impact. So the last thing we can look at here, great. What do we do about all this stuff? Here's our summary. So this is your numbers at the top, green and red. The PGA normative data is underneath in the black. It gives you just a range of sort of the 70th percentile there for everyone on tour that they measure and capture. And then here what we can do is we look for the lowest possible deficit here. What's our biggest discrepancy? And then we can actually use the vest and do real-time training.
Cool.
So that's pretty neat stuff. Again, if we look through, first one obviously posture is jumping out. Pelvis position at the top, so pelvis position, even though we didn't quite get the graph we wanted, the plane and the movement looks really good. So there's some motor control thing that we have to work on.
So something's okay.
Exactly. So this is why you want to look at the whole picture. You can't just take each graph and say, oh my gosh, it's definitely this. You have to take the whole picture, the physical screening stuff, the sequencing graph, and then our normative data. So posture's looking like our big thing right now. Pelvis and upper body turns are looking good, other than we're a little slow to get pelvis and upper